In the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, over 1400 years ago, a city named Mecca thrived as a hub of trade and spirituality. The city was surrounded by inhospitable desert with limited agricultural activities, but its location made Mecca a crucial stop for caravans. The economy of Mecca was primarily based on trade. Caravans carried goods such as spices, silk, precious metals, and other commodities. In the centuries leading up to the birth of Muhammad, Christianity had become the dominant faith of the Mediterranean, and its message was quickly spreading to other regions of the world via the major trade routes of that era. Mecca was a city along these trade routes and may have played a role in the flow of goods and ideas between the trade systems of the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean. It should therefore come as no surprise that Islam would be heavily influenced by the traditions of Christianity and Judaism. For example, the same characters appears in the stories of Christians and Jews. Abraham, Moses, and Jesus are all considered important prophets in Islam. Muslims even claim that Abraham visited Mecca and established the Kaaba there, although there is no mention of this event in Christian and Judaic sources. Meccan society was hierarchical, with a clear distinction between the wealthy elite and the poorer classes. Wealthy merchants and tribal leaders held significant power and influence, controlling the trade and religious affairs of the city. Slavery was common, and slaves were an integral part of the social and economic fabric. Wealth and power were concentrated among the elite, leading to significant social inequalities. The poorer classes, including slaves, faced harsh conditions and limited opportunities for upward mobility. Social issues such as infanticide, particularly female infanticide, exploitation, and injustice were prevalent. Tribal feuds and wars between tribes and clans often disrupted social harmony. Poetry and oral tradition was highly esteemed, serving as a means of preserving history, conveying values, and for entertainment. Hospitality and generosity were valued traits essential in the harsh desert environment. Apart from it being a flourishing trade center, Mecca was also famous for its religious significance. And prominent among those was the Kaaba, a cuboid structure located in the city of Mecca whose significance predates Islam, stretching back to ancient times when it was a prominent religious and cultural symbol for the nomadic Arabs. The Kaaba was the focal point of religious life, drawing pilgrims from various tribes even before the advent of Islam. These pilgrimages, known as Hajj, involved various rituals and were significant religious and social events. The area around the Kaaba, known as the Haram, was considered sacred. Violence and warfare were prohibited within its bounds, making it a place of peace and sanctuary. Pilgrims from across the Arabian Peninsula would visit the Kaaba, bringing offerings and seeking blessings from the idols. These pilgrimages were important religious and social events. Festivals and fairs such as the Ukaj fair combined trade with religious activities, fostering both economic and social exchanges. Mecca's economy was also bolstered by its status as a religious center. The pre-Islamic Arabs were polytheistic, worshipping a multitude of gods and goddesses. Estimates and historical records show that the Kaaba housed 360 idols representing various deities. Hubal was one of the chief deities worshipped in the Kaaba in Mecca. He was considered a god of rain and fertility. Also in the same Kaaba were the idols of gods such as Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Another of the 360 gods was a god named Allah, whose name just meant that, the god. Allah was perceived as the creator and sustainer of the universe, but not necessarily as the sole object of worship. Many Arabs considered him as a supreme deity among a pantheon of gods and goddesses. Hubal's idol was physically present inside the Kaaba, while Allah was acknowledged as a higher god without a physical idol. Amongst the tribes that lived in Mecca, the prominent one was the Quraysh tribe, who were the dominant an influential tribe in Mecca. They controlled the trade and profited from the caravan routes. Key clans within the Quraysh included the Banu Hashim and the Banu Umayyah. Besides the Quraysh, other tribes and clans also lived in and around Mecca. But all this was about to change towards the end of the 6th century. This ancient city would soon become the epicenter of a transformative journey. And it started with one man, Muhammad. This is a story of how a normal goat herd from Mecca became a prophet and how he changed the history of the world forever. Hello and welcome to Pale Blue Thoughts, and this is another episode of the evolution of gods and religions. If you like my content and would like to see more, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Also, your support is invaluable for me, so please support via super thanks and by becoming a member, which would help me make even better content. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born around the year 570 CE in the city of Mecca, located in present-day Saudi Arabia. Muhammad's father, Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib, was a member of the respected Quraysh tribe, specifically the Banu Hashim clan. Abdullah passed away before Muhammad was born, leaving his young wife Amina bin Wahab a widow. Amina, Muhammad's mother, too belonged to the Quraysh tribe, and her family held a significant position in Meccan society. Muhammad was born in his grandfather Abdul Muttalib's house, and upon hearing the news of his grandson's birth, Abdul Muttalib was overjoyed. He named the boy Muhammad, a name uncommon at the time but meant the praised one. After his birth, as was the custom among the noble families of Mecca, Muhammad was sent to the desert to be nursed and raised by a wet nurse. The rationale behind this practice was to allow children to grow up in a healthier environment away from the bustling city and to develop a strong constitution. Muhammad was entrusted to Halima Sadiya, a woman from the Banu Saad tribe. Muhammad lived with Halima for about 4 years, during which he was nurtured with love and care, growing strong and healthy. Upon returning to Mecca, Muhammad was reunited with his mother Amina. However, tragedy struck again when he was just 6 years old. Amina fell ill and passed away. Now an orphan, Muhammad was taken by his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib, despite his old age, provided Muhammad with affection and protection. Muhammad was very dear to him, and Abdul Muttalib ensured that the boy was given the best possible care. However, 2 years later, when Muhammad was just 8, Abdul Muttalib also passed away. Following the death of his grandfather, Muhammad was taken in by his uncle Abu Talib, who became his guardian. Abu Talib, though not wealthy, was generous and kind-hearted. He treated Muhammad with the same love and care as his own children. Abu Talib's protection and support would prove crucial in Muhammad's later years, especially during the early days of his prophethood. We will come to that later. As a child, Muhammad worked as a shepherd to help support his family, but later became a merchant who undertook several journeys with the caravans to nearby and distant lands. He was very interested in hearing the native stories from the places that he visited, which has a high significance once he declared himself a prophet. At the age of 25, he married Khadija, a wealthy widow and successful businesswoman who at 40 was 15 years his senior. Khadija had an enormous influence on Muhammad as well as his prophethood, as we will see in a moment. Muhammad had this habit of visiting a cave regularly called the Cave of Hira on Mount Noor, just outside the city of Mecca. It was during one of these retreats at the age of 40 that Muhammad is supposed to have received his first revelation from Allah through the angel Gabriel, marking the beginning of his prophethood. On that fateful night in the year 610 CE, Muhammad's life changed forever. According to Islamic belief, it was the 27th night of Ramadan, now celebrated as Laylat al-Qadr, the night of decree, a night of great significance in Islamic spirituality. As he meditated in the cave, he felt a powerful presence had engulfed him. As Muhammad meditated in the cave, an angel named Gabriel or Jibril suddenly appeared before him and commanded him with the word Iqra. This word in Arabic means to read or recite. Muhammad, who was an illiterate and not expecting such an encounter, was initially taken aback and replied, "I cannot read." The angel Gabriel then embraced Muhammad tightly, compelling him to recite again. This sequence repeated, each time increasing in intensity until Muhammad recited the verse revealed to him. It was at that moment the first verses of what would become the Quran were revealed. Read in the name of your Lord who created the man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. These verses can be seen in the 96th chapter of Quran named Surah Al-Alaq. Alaq meaning blood clot. Logic would tell you that these verses should be the first verses in the book, and you would expect to see it in the first chapter or perhaps very early into the book, and not the 96th chapter of a book which contains 114 chapters. But not in this book. For Quran is a book which is not written or compiled in any chronological order. Whatever Muhammad has uttered as ayahs or ayats or divine revelations have been stitched together in a very haphazard manner. Just to give an example, the second chapter, Al-Baqarah, contains revelations which Muhammad made in Medina, which happened 13 years after his prophet life in Mecca. By this time, he had revealed a lot of significant ayats. Some chapters contain verses which were told during his time in Mecca and also from the time he was in Medina. There is no order whatsoever in how the book has been compiled, not chronologically or subject-wise or in any kind of logical order. Plus, Muhammad in his lifetime has not seen a book named Quran, for it was compiled centuries after he had died. Anyways, coming back to our story, when Muhammad had his vision of Gabriel, who pressed him literally to read, Muhammad got scared and ran home to his wife Khadija. Shivering with fear, he asked her to cover him with a sheet of cloth. This action was not because he was shivering, but prophets in those days had the habit of giving their prophecies from under a cloth or someplace dark. Khadija comforted Muhammad and reassured him that the experience was a sign of divine favor. She affirmed his belief, thereby acknowledging that he was chosen for a great purpose by God. It was common in those days for prophets to give what they thought were revelations from God. Anyways, we only have Muhammad's words that he was visited by an angel. And it was Khadija who introduced the idea that it was Jibril and not some devil. First of all, Muhammad had no idea who Jibril or Gabriel was. His clan and all his relatives were idol worshippers. Secondly, he never read any scriptures or followed any of the Jewish or Christian teachings ever. So he was completely unaware of the angels or prophets. It is his first wife Khadija who had little knowledge about the holy books or Ahle Kitabs. Some even say she was a Christian. Thirdly, the stranger in Hira never mentioned that he came from God with a message. It was the wife's imagination and her idea which has no evidence of truth. Fourthly, there is no evidence apart from his own words that Muhammad had received any divine call ever from above or anywhere else. So to seek clarity and guidance, Khadija took Muhammad to her cousin Waraqah ibn Nawfal, who was a Christian scholar and was knowledgeable about the scriptures and also familiar with divine revelations. Waraqah listened attentively to Muhammad's account of the experience and recognized the signs of prophethood in the encounter with Gabriel. He affirmed that Muhammad had received revelation from a source similar to that had spoken to Moses and Jesus before him. Khadija, seeking further confirmation, devised a test to distinguish whether Muhammad's experiences were truly from a divine source or from any other entity, such as an evil spirit. She asked Muhammad a series of questions about the nature of the revelations, the clarity and coherence of the messages, and whether he experienced any sense of discomfort or fear during these encounters. She then asked Muhammad to call her in case the angel appeared to him again. One day, Muhammad called her and said he could see the angel Gabriel up in the sky. Khadija, of course, could not see anything, so she asked Muhammad to sit on her left thigh. Then she asked if Muhammad could see the angel. He replied that he could. She then asked him to sit on his right thigh and asked if he could see it now. He again replied yes, he could see. She then proceeded to remove her clothes and asked Muhammad to sit on her thighs again and asked if he could see the angel now. Now Muhammad said that the angel was not there. So Khadija deduced that Muhammad was seeing an angel and not an evil spirit. Because had it been shaitan or an evil spirit, they would stick around even if a lady was naked. But the pious angels would go away when they saw a naked lady. This was a common superstition among the Arabs in those days, and Khadija used that very superstition to ascertain if Muhammad was getting his revelation from a divine source or an evil one. In Islamic terminology, Jahiliyyah refers to the period before the advent of Islam. It is derived from the Arabic root jahil, which means ignorance or foolishness. This period is considered by Muslims as a period of ignorance and barbarism. The Quran and the teachings of Muhammad were said to eradicate the ignorance and injustices of Jahiliyyah. But isn't it ironic that the very cornerstone of Muhammad's prophethood was established on the superstitions prevalent in the Jahiliyyah period? Now, what if it was indeed the devil who had appeared in front of Muhammad and decided to retreat so as to fool Khadija when she took off her clothes? Then all the rest of this book would come crashing down, since it would appear as if the revelations were not from a god but from another not so divine source. Anyways, Khadija became one of the first to embrace Islam, and soon close friends and some of the family, including Ali, Abu Bakr, Khadija's slaves Zayed, Umar and Usman, followed suit. Those who followed him were called Sahaba. It is again ironical that Abu Talib, his guardian, never converted to Islam even after several attempts by Muhammad. Even at his deathbed, when Muhammad forced Abu Talib to convert to Islam so that he could reach heaven, Abu Talib never chose to follow his own kin. He saw through Muhammad. At first, the pagan Arabs were tolerant and even curious about this new prophet. They had a genuine interest in the monotheistic beliefs of the Jews and Christians and were willing to make room for another religious belief system in their society. It was not until Muhammad began insulting the traditional pagan deities and insisting that the pagan Arabs and their ancestors will burn in hell for eternity for worshipping false gods that they began to regard Muhammad and his followers with disdain. And so for 13 years, Muhammad kept reciting stories of yesteryears and stories which he had picked up during his travels around the Arabian Peninsula as though they were revelation from a single God, Allah. He said he was the last of the messengers that Allah had sent to teach humanity how to live. He challenged the polytheistic beliefs of Quraysh tribe and made Allah the one and only true God. But even after preaching for 13 long years, he could only gather a handful of followers, and the rest were called mushriks or mushrikeen because they followed or idolized many other gods. The mushriks saw through Muhammad and they refused to join his cult. Muhammad is said to have made many attempts, including peaceful conversions to forceful ones, to change their minds and to get them to follow his faith, but they remained steadfast in their belief. He even started to pray by bowing down on the ground, which is basically a Jewish practice inside the Kaaba. This would have irked the Quraysh, but they remained peaceful and at worst resorting to ridiculing Muhammad or calling out his revelations as tales of yesteryears. Muhammad and his followers even indulged in defecating over the idols that the Qurayshi tribes idolized and also hanging them by ropes and telling them that they were hanged to death. Imagine what would happen today if someone prayed according to another religion inside a mosque, or if someone desecrated a mosque. They would not have a head to bow again. But the so-called mushriks did not raise their hands against Muhammad, who was often protected by Abu Talib, and he was an influential person among the Quraysh. They went and complained to Abu Talib, who reprimanded Muhammad and told him not to do such things. Yes, there is a story of how someone threw some entrails of a camel on Muhammad's neck while he was praying, and how Muhammad forgave him. Yes, we will come to that story another time. Muhammad also tried to persuade the Arab Jews and Christians to accept his faith, but they too refused to let go of what they already believed in. Anyways, 13 years into his prophethood, Khadija died, and Muhammad and his handful of followers realized that they cannot convert the Quraysh into Islam, so they decided to leave Mecca and go elsewhere. So in 622 CE, Muhammad and his followers migrated to Medina, a move known as the Hijra. In Medina, Muhammad emerged not just as a spiritual leader, but also as a political statesman and military commander or warlord. Several raids and wars happened once Muhammad and his team reached Medina between the Quraysh and other local tribes. From his new base in Medina, Muhammad sent his followers out to raid the merchant caravans of the pagan Arabs. In response, the pagans began guarding their caravans with armed soldiers. In 624 AD, the Muslims attacked and defeated a heavily guarded merchant caravan and took many of the pagans captive. This incident is known as the Battle of Badr and was the first major battle in the Muslim conquest of Arabia. In 630 CE, after years of conflict, Muhammad and his followers marched on to Mecca to capture it. Expecting fierce resistance, they were instead met with minimal opposition. They then proceeded to take over the Kaaba and destroyed the 360 idols that were in Kaaba and made Islam as the only religion that should be followed from then on. In 632 CE, Muhammad performed his first and only Hajj pilgrimage, known as the farewell pilgrimage, Hajjat al-Wada. And in between all this, he also made a small trip to meet Allah, who was sitting atop the seventh sky, and also got a chance to get a peek into heaven and hell. All this in one night on top of a creature named Waraqah. This event is known as Isra and Miraj. That story can be told in detail in a later video if need be. And finally, Muhammad passed away on 8th of June 632 CE in Medina at the age of 63. And that is the story in brief about how a goat herd became a prophet. Even today, thousands die each day because they still believe in the story told by a prophet who told prophecies for his prophet. What he created in the end was a toxic religion called Islam, which is followed by millions of Muslims who are its victims. I know I have only scratched the surface of the story, and there is more to this story. Would you like to hear more stories about Islam and the Quran? For that, you need to like this video and comment below this video, because by doing so, you would help this video reach many more, and that would inspire me to make more content about Islam, its last prophet, and his fake ID named Allah. If you like my content, please support through your contributions, which would help me develop even better content. You can choose to pay through Super Thanks or through memberships or through Buy Me a Coffee. Your contributions will be announced through all my social media profiles. With the membership, you get to watch my videos earlier than anyone else. More membership perks coming up soon as the number grows. So please support if you like my content. As usual, please leave your likes and comments, which would help this channel to reach more people. I shall be back soon with another scientific temper promoting content. Till then, stay awesome.